Hey baddies, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing y'all how to do 3D flowers. You're going to learn how to do acrylic flowers and also the newer gel flowers that have been going viral. Before using this method, my 3D flowers used to look like literal caca. But now my 3D flowers look the best that they've ever looked. Like, I know y'all see that improvement. So if you struggle with 3D flowers, this is the video for you. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So to do acrylic flowers, you're going to need some monomer. I used the Kiara Sky one, and make sure you don't spill it because that shit is expensive. Then you're going to need some 100% acetone. Put a little tiny bit of it in your monomer. Then you're going to use any white acrylic powder. I used the Super White by V Beauty Pure, of course. Last but not least, you're going to need a 3D brush, and this one is the one that I use. Dip your brush into the monomer and acetone, then swirl your brush into the powder to pick up a bead, but don't be stupid and drop it like I did. Bruh. Anyways, after you pick up your bead, you're gonna place it where you want your petal to be at, but not too close to the middle where your rhinestone should be. The rhinestone is basically a marker for where all your petals should meet at. You don't want your bead to be too runny before you start shaping it into a petal, so to check the consistency, we're gonna push in the corners a little bit, and if it keeps the shape that you give it, then it's a good consistency, but if it doesn't, you gotta wait a little bit longer. Waiting for the right consistency might take you a little bit longer depending on the monomer and powder you're using, but it's important not to rush it. Once your bead is the right consistency, you're gonna start shaping your petal by keeping the skinniest part of your brush in the middle of your bead and then using the wider parts of your brush to just open the petal and make it wider. The key is to keep the skinniest part of your brush in the middle of the petal at all times and just widen your motions. This takes a little bit more practice, but it does get easier over time, and then once you got the hang of it, you should have a petal. And when you're happy with the size of it, you're gonna move on to your second one. So you know how we just made the petal wider, right? So for the second petal, you're not going to place it directly next to your first one. You're going to place it a little bit further away because as we just saw in the first bead, we're going to make the petal wider. So the bead size is not actually going to be the size of what your petal is since we are opening it and making it wider. So we do need to be mindful of the space between the petals because we don't want overlapping petals unless that's the look that we're trying to achieve, and we also don't want the petals to be too far apart from each other. Some common mistakes that I see and that I also made when I started to do acrylic flowers was not taking enough time on each petal. I was just trying to rush the process, which is really not a good idea, especially if you're just starting to learn, because it doesn't give you muscle memory to be able to do the same thing on every petal. And number two, I was picking up beads that were either too small or too big, and I was miscalculating the proportions of each petal, and the flowers were looking wonky. So unless you want your flowers looking deformed, don't rush, and just remember that good things take time, so it might take a little bit more practice, but once you have the hang of it, your flowers should look like this. The top and bottom petals of the half flower are bigger, so you're going to pick up a bigger bead and you're going to place it in the bottom. I like to start from the bottom up. You're going to lightly drag the bead down and then repeat the same motions that you did for the first petal by opening it up, but we're also going to be dragging the petal down as we go along, but only in the middle. Make sure the base of your petal is wider and then the ends are skinnier by tucking in the ends of the petal with your brush as you go along. As you're shaping the petal, the acrylic will start to dry on you, so it's important to keep a good pace. As a beginner, this might be a little bit harder because of the shape of the petal, but once you start to get the hang of how the acrylic dries, then it's a little bit easier to manage. And once you're done shaping your first petal, it should look something like this. It should be a little bit wider at the top and skinny at the bottom. Then we're gonna repeat the same exact thing on the top petal, kind of just inverted. The shape that we're going for is kind of more of like a teardrop rather than a circular shape, so just be mindful of that as well. Also keep in mind that your acrylic is not going to stay moldable forever, so make sure you're balancing between opening up the petal and dragging the bead down so that you can get that shape right, because if you don't, then you're not going to give yourself enough time to do one or the other. If you haven't watched my application and shaping tutorial, I'm going to link it at the top of the video right here so that you can watch that. In that video, I also talk about how you need to not let the acrylic control you. You have to control the acrylic. So that's basically the same principle here. You just have to really take your time with it and learn how it works. If you don't like how the petal looks, looks, just take it off and start again until you actually get the hang of it. So now that you have both petals done, it should look like this. Now in between the two petals, we're going to do 3 smaller petals. You're going to place the first one a little bit further away from the middle and then drag it towards the middle, and then you're going to let it dry a little bit until it's moldable, and then you're going to just press it down. Don't do too much widening of these petals, just keep it the way it is so that you could fit the other two, but it's really straightforward. To make sure that all 3 of these petals are proportionate, I start with the bottom one first, and then I start with the topmost one, and then I do the middle one just to make sure that the middle one is not out of place and it's exactly in the middle. So I'm going to repeat the same step I just did with the first little petal. And to make sure your flower looks good, just make sure that the top petal is facing upwards into the left and the downward petal is facing downwards into the left instead of facing straight out, if that makes sense. Now the middle petal, I place it a little bit further away than the other two because I like that petal to be the biggest or the most far out of the flower. And then you're going to repeat the same step and you're just going to make it face straight out. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but if you've been paying attention, you know that I'm just shaping the petal to my liking right now. And once you've completed all 5 petals, your flower should look something like this. I'm calling this one the underside flower because it usually goes under a charm or something like that. But first bead is going to be a little bit bigger than all the other ones we've done, and you're basically going to do the same technique that you did for the side flower for one of those big petals, and you're going to drag it down. Make sure that you're not dragging it down with too much force and you're just slightly dragging it down to create a teardrop shape. And then you're going to place the skinniest part of your brush in the middle and do the same widening motions that we've been doing. The biggest component of these flowers is having a good brush, so make sure that you get a good quality one. I'm using the V Beauty Pure one, and if you want 20% off your purchase, you could use my code NAILBY for money off because I love y'all and I want to give y'all a little discount. But yeah, just shape this petal to your liking, make it wide, make it big, because this is a pretty big flower and this is a pretty big charm. You just want to do it based off of the size of your charm. I'm doing it a little bit bigger because this charm is bigger, but if you have a smaller charm, or let's say a smaller nail or a shorter nail, then you would do it a little bit smaller. It's just a rule of thumb basically. Once you have your first petal down, the next thing you do is move on to your smaller petals. The first one you're going to place down directly next to the first big petal. It's going to be a medium sized one. Again, it just depends on the size of the nail, but you're going to do the same thing and just widen it. And this one's going to be a circular shape. You're going to repeat the same step for the next bead and try and make it as similar in size as you can to the one that you just placed down. I think by the time you get to this part of the video, you're basically ready to start doing your flowers, or at least you know the basics of what you're doing. So this is what your flower should look like. So obviously for the gel flower, we're not using acrylic, we're using gel. I use these little gel pods from Marvin. They come with about 6 of these little pods. They have different colors and it's very affordable. Instead of using a regular Kolinsky brush, I'm using a silicone brush. It's basically like rubber. It's very moldable, it's very bendable, and that's what I use for my gel flowers. So to pick up a quote-unquote bead of gel, you're gonna use a cuticle pusher. I use my V Beauty Pure one. It doesn't really matter what you use, but you're gonna basically dig into the gel and you're going to do circular motions with your cuticle pusher to kind of pick up a ball. And it's not going to be too big, it's not going to be too small, but it's going to be a good size, just like this. And that's basically the first step. You're going to do this and you're going to pick up 5 little beads, and then you're going to place them on the nail in an arrangement just like you see right here, and then you're ready to start molding and shaping your flower. So since we don't have a rhinestone in the middle just yet, we're going to just drag all the beads into the middle just like you see me doing right here with our silicone brush. We're not going to press out or anything like that. We're just dragging them and pushing them into the middle just so that we have a good idea of where the middle is going to be. Now you could leave your flower just like this because it does look like a flower, but I like to just press down against each petal and widen it a little bit just like we did with the acrylic ones, but with not that much pressure or force, not to hurt our client or anything like that. We're just going to do it lightly and give it a little bit more shape. This is pretty straightforward. A lot of people prefer doing these flowers instead of the acrylic flowers, which is completely fine. I do recommend learning how to do acrylic flowers just in case because it does give it a different look and a different feel. But if that's what you're going for, then this is definitely an easier alternative to acrylic flowers, and it's definitely beginner friendly. After you cure your flower for 60 seconds, you can paint it, you can add some designs, whatever you want, and you can even add some beads in the middle for the middle of the flower. And now hopefully you know how to do acrylic and gel flowers. Thank y'all for watching this tutorial. If it helped you, please leave a like and definitely subscribe for more tutorials in the future. Comment down below any other tutorials you want to see from me and I will do that as quickly as I possibly can for you guys. And you could definitely DM a picture of your improvement on your flowers to my nail page. It's gonna be on the screen. I definitely want to see how you guys have improved and how this tutorial has helped you. But anyways, thank y'all so much for watching. I love y'all so much. Bye.